Hannah, and I am an illustrator who is currently studying illustration at an art school in Osaka, Japan. So today we're just going to focus on the class that's called Job-woku, which means job work, which is my Photoshop class. I thought I knew Photoshop pretty well, but I learned so many new things in this class that I didn't really know that I was capable of. So I'll start by explaining the very first assignment. We basically had a picture of an apple and we just had to copy the apple. So I'm going to show you the picture of the apple. So this is the apple's photograph that she gave us. And then here is my apple right here. So I'm going to now take you to a recording just of my computer to show you the different layers, what I mean. If you're familiar with Photoshop, this might be interesting to you.
This is my apple in Photoshop. So I have one folder, which is all of my color. And then you can see that there is a grayscale. I did the stem separate layer. I don't really remember why. But the main thing is this gray apple and the shadow and the stem. I did the details in black and white on this layer and I used a clipping mask. So in the folder above, I first have the color overlay and I dropped a main color from the picture and made it the overlay color, and I got pretty far with that, and that's what the teacher did. And then on each layer, I just sort of added some details. I also changed the shadow, but I added some like more oranges and reds and yellows and pinks and worked on the highlight. I added more details on each layer because I am always afraid of messing something up. So if you do it all in one layer and then you erase something, all of it's erased. So if I was happy with one layer, I would then start on a new layer to add the details, such as like more of the little stripes on the apple, the little lines, and the little dots. And then at the very end, I felt like my shadow wasn't dark enough compared to the photograph. So I added some shadow using the multiply tool. So I just put some color on it and then I multiplied it and I turned down the opacity. And that was my apple.
In this class, we were using a Wacom tablet. If you're not familiar, it's sort of like a touchpad and you draw on it. The second assignment we did was similar. We also did a hyper-realistic illustration based off of an image. Here is the image, the photograph that she gave us of the water that I chose. And then here is my rendition of it, done all in Photoshop. Well, not actually all in Photoshop. So for this particular one, we did the outline with the pen tool of just the glass first in Illustrator. But all I used for this particular project and the apple really were, I used basically like kind of a chalk or textured brush tool. I frankly don't remember which one I used. And then I used, I think it's the smooth tool or the smudge tool. It's the one that's a little finger like this. I'll put the name of which tool it is because I forgot to look it up. So those are the only two tools that I used to make this digital painting of this glass.
So I want to show you this glass as a screen recording because from far away, I don't think you can really tell that it is a illustration. But if you get close up into my Photoshop file, you can see that I used the brush tool and that it is strokes and not a photograph. As I mentioned previously, I only used the smudge tool, which is under the paint bucket or gradient tool. It's these three dots on the bottom, and it's the little finger right there. And I used the brush tool. This time I used just the regular like hard brush or soft brush. I did not use a textured brush this time. And then, as I mentioned as well, we did a pen outline first in Illustrator, and then we did the clipping masks on top of it in Photoshop. So I already painted directly on the outline that I did, and I put all of the shadows in a separate layer because I didn't want to ruin anything. And then each layer I just added more details. I did the lemon on a separate layer, added more details to the lemon on a second layer, and I made it a little darker, and each time I just kept building. And all of the bubbles are pretty much, and the splash are on one layer. But I did put some bubbles on top of the lemon on a separate layer because of how everything was organized, it made more sense that way. So I was pretty happy with how this one came out. I definitely spent a lot more time on this one than I did on the apple, and I was definitely a lot more precise. I don't think it's something that I would do again because, first of all, it's not really my style, but second of all, I don't see myself spending this much time, frankly, on one illustration.
I would say since I already had a familiarity with the program, I could quickly integrate certain things like multiply or color overlay pretty easily, because the teacher kind of did just let us go forward and didn't give us a lot of guidance. However, she was doing it at the same time as us, so you could watch her. We have little screens where we can see what she's doing, so she can also give us a walkthrough. So you could actually see what she's doing. So sometimes I would watch to see what she was doing, and frankly, most of the time she was just painting. And then finally, for our third assignment was connected with our other class. So that's something that's been interesting, is that we have a morning Friday class with sort of the head of the illustrator, or not sort of, he is the head of the illustration department. And in his class, we've had 2 assignments that we then did, one in the Illustrator and one in the Photoshop class. So it's been kind of nice to harmonize between classes that way. I've never had that happen before. So for his class, we had a choice. We could do the zodiac animals and draw the 12 zodiac animals as characters, or we could do the astrological signs and draw them as characters. So I went with the astrological signs because I've been really wanting to actually do that for a while. I really was pretty happy with all of my drawings. So first we did sketches, and then once we got the sketches approved by him, we then had a light table and we inked them. And then we took them to the Photoshop class, scanned the ink, and then depending on the student, some of them redid the outline in Photoshop, but I would say the majority of people just painted them in Photoshop according to the line. But I didn't want to do line art. I, of course, wanted to make my life more difficult, and I wanted to do it all shading. And I didn't want to use traditional colors, like traditional skin colors. I wanted to make them be unusual skin colors, like yellow, pink, purple. So I made actually a whole colorway for all of them. I will show, it's really rough, but I'll show it to you here. This is my rough colorway of how I wanted them to look. And I think altogether they look nice. But then when I tried to actually illustrate them, it wasn't coming out well. The poor Cancer, girl on the crab, she just looked no bueno, and I just kept spending time trying to make her face look better, and it just wasn't working. And the teacher really tried to help me. She showed me her work, we talked about it, we talked about shading. So she was trying to explain shadows and light and softness, and it was just looking really ugly. So I decided to redo the lines on my tablet on Procreate on my iPad, and then bring them in the next week and just do a very flat coloring. But then when I did that, I thought they looked too cartoony for me, and also too hard and too stiff. So again, I spoke to the teacher, and she suggested that I use the pencil tool in Procreate to give it a more soft line, and to use the charcoal brush in Photoshop to also give it a more textured, softer line. So the next week I came in with new line drawings, which I was more happy with, and I colored them with the chalk tool. I am still not 100% satisfied. So I actually want to go into detail about this in another video where I'm going to just explore practicing digital art using hopefully one style, because that was the advice that she gave me. So our next and final assignment prior to summer break was learning how to render different types of basically materials. We had cubes, basically cubes that were different elements or materials.
So basically we had two materials that she wanted us to do. One was ice. So we did the ice cube first, most of us. And basically she just gave us the document with gray cubes, changed the color, I added details on top, and then changed the opacity to some of the layers because ice you can see through, so you want to make it partially transparent. We had her example to follow, but I don't really feel comfortable showing it here. I think the biggest trick I learned was putting this color layer on overlay on top, which really helped brighten my cube a lot because mine got kind of dark, and this helped brighten and make it more blue. So I feel like that was a nifty trick, and it doesn't have to be on full opacity. For the second material that we did was a block of wood. Again, mine is not quite like the teacher's. She did a little more cracks and indents inside of it, whereas mine looks a little bit more shaved down. But I feel like pretty happy with the wood. And again, we started with just these gray cube layers, changed the color, and then I added details on top to make it less smooth. And for me, the trick, we didn't do the overlay, but we did I saw she did levels to help brighten it. And then you could change the color a little bit to make it a little warmer or cooler. So my levels made it a little too warm, so I brought the color balance in to bring down to a more wood, less orangey color. Lastly, for the third material, we could choose anything we wanted. So I decided I wanted to illustrate a cake. This is my mood board. And I decided to go with this strawberry shortcake, but with more of this type of border around it and with one strawberry on top like this one. Unfortunately, it took me a lot longer than I expected, and I only had one class time to finish, which is 3 hours. So I wasn't able to finish the strawberry on top, which was very sad. I would like to go back and finish the strawberry, and I also didn't have as much time to make the icing look as nice as I would like around the border. This was my sketch that I put. I originally had some flowers that I decided to get rid of as well. And so we'll go back and revisit this strawberry cake later, maybe during break if I have time. But that was the last assignment for this class this semester.
And it's been a really enlightening class for me because I've never done hyper-realistic digital painting. And maybe you don't think my art is that hyper-realistic, but I tend to do much more graphic art, much more flat, less gradation and less realistic. So I feel like I've learned a lot, and it's really given me confidence that I didn't have previously. And I kind of want to go into making more cube art, but it took so much longer than I expected. That was surprising to me. So if you are interested in learning more about my other classes, be it either my Adobe Illustrator class or my techniques in different art class, so that one we learn we learned acrylic and graphite, and now we're working on a calendar just of the 4 seasons. But I think that's going to be a really fun thing to work on. So thanks so much for watching. I am really looking forward to learning more this next semester, and I really would like to know what you would be interested in seeing. So please tell me what you think of my astrological signs, and if you think they're done or what I could do to improve them. Or maybe you liked one of the other styles better. I just felt like that purple girl, I just felt so bad for her. She didn't deserve that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this ramble, and I will get back to you with a new video, hopefully related to digital art soon. All right, bye.